The first thing you said when you came in, while we were listening there, was that you've just come from Buckingham Palace as well. And you've done a few years' service, and you said you were overwhelmed by what you saw.
Indeed, because coming out of the press tents, there is a vast, just as you walk up towards Green Park, a tidal wave of humanity to pay tribute. It's quite extraordinary, people coming in their tens of thousands still. I mean, this is an example of the way the Queen embodied the soul of our nation, and people are showing affection, gratitude, waiting, as you know, for very long periods of time,
yes,
just for those very few precious seconds to pass that coffin in Westminster Hall. Very precious, and they'll remember it all their lives.
Have you ever seen anything in your lifetime of professional commentary and reporting on this sort of thing that gets anywhere near to it?
Nothing could be comparable, I don't think, because obviously the Queen Mother's funeral was, I mean, there was a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. Some 300,000 people paid homage in Westminster Hall. And also, as you will recall, The Guardian predicted that there would be precious little interest both in that and in the subsequent Golden Jubilee, and it had to recant, which is quite unusual. But, I mean, that was the one thing that comes to mind. Of course, the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales, was something completely different. In a league of its own, you could say, the response. Churchill's funeral in 1965.
I always remember black and white, and I remember the cranes, the dockers' cranes, bowing in honour to Winston.
It's interesting.
An extraordinary image.
That one particular image has become legendary, has become part and parcel of the, well, it's a sort of tapestry of myth that surrounds these events.
While we're chatting, we're keeping up these pictures, which are just away from Buckingham Palace and across in the Palace of Westminster, the vigil, the lying in state of the late Queen, and again, dignitaries arriving to pay their respects, as well as, Richard just said, literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people queuing up outside to get in. And this, again, is the scene at Buckingham Palace. Again, we'll just watch those, because that's two of the official Range Rovers, and therefore one of the royal party is going in there. Or it could be Liz Truss going for the meeting that Cameron was talking about, because the Prime Minister uses a Range Rover occasionally herself, as well as whichever car is. There's an amusing minor debate about what car she's going to be using in future. But there we are. Cameron's going to find out who that was. I'm not going to speculate at any point, because you don't want to waste your time with speculation. You want to have facts. And I'm going to bring Richard back into the conversation as we look at those folk there. Among the royal guests who are coming tomorrow are King Felipe of Spain, whose inauguration and marriage you commentated on, and Prince Albert of Monaco, whose wedding you commented on. Why do people like that feel it is so important to be here for her?
Because I think there are 28 royal families in the world today, and there's only one that has the profile, that has the cachet of ours. It's quite literally a fact. There will be a large contingent of royalty from around the world, and there's absolutely no question. I mean, from the Emperor of Japan is coming, apparently, and because of security considerations, they may all, and this is one of the aspects of it that's...
And only to butt in, because, again, reading lots of stuff ahead of tomorrow, the fact that the Emperor of Japan and the Empress have almost been reclusive these last couple of 3 years. So not only to leave the palace and the peacock throne, but to come to the United Kingdom. That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, and the world will be watching. It's been estimated that from 3 to 4 billion people around the world will be tuning in. I mean, that is so phenomenal. For Churchill's funeral, it was something like 320 to 50 million. It was a different age, and there 120 countries were represented. Here there are reports that up to 200 countries, territories, parts of the world will be, and it will be an extraordinary event.
Yeah, let me just butt in on that to let you at home know, who are watching on television and listening on radio here on GB News, that Cameron's just told me in my ear that was indeed Liz Truss going for the meeting that he talked about at the very top of the programme. And, of course, there's also the 6 o'clock diplomatic reception there at the Palace. Richard, coming back down to the domestic agenda, you also commentated and covered the passing out as an officer from Sandhurst of Prince Harry.
Indeed, yes.
2 points. We are a news programme. We don't just do fawning and that sort of stuff. There is a story there that he only wore uniform at his vigil the night before last at the King's request, and yet his insignia excludes Elizabeth R. How significant is all of that to him, the man?
I think the need to wear military uniform, and you've seen 2 terms of duty as he has in Afghanistan, not to mention the Invictus Games, there's no doubt at all that whatever the protocol with reference to working royals, there's been a great deal of debate about this. What happened when he and William, wearing the uniforms of the Blues and Royals, appeared at that vigil with 6 other grandchildren, beginning a new tradition, I would suggest, for royal funerals. I think it was tremendously significant for him. I also think, indeed, by order of the King, as you say, but there is no doubt in the accession address he sent love to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and
beginning their new life abroad.
Indeed, and that is the way I see it continuing. On the other hand, of course, as you know, the day afterwards, William's instigation, and he and Catherine appeared with Harry and Meghan at Windsor, and of course looked at the floral tributes and met some onlookers and so on. But what will this in actual fact lead to? Now, that is what we don't know.
No, indeed.
We can hope.
And there was another curious indication, and we talked about it with friends of yours and colleagues on the programme yesterday, and that was live pictures. I suddenly got shouted at in my ear, as it's happened to you many times, and it happened to me yesterday. The King's going walkabout in South London, talking to members of the queue, and then the next thing was that, goodness gracious me, the Prince of Wales is with him as well. I mean, in effect, the King and his heir rewrote a big chunk of protocol yesterday, because it wasn't just walkabout nodding politely. It was in there, it was intimate.
It was, indeed. You could see them shake hands, chat, the way they connected.
Just stop, look at that picture. Just look at that little face. Extraordinary. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I mean, that kind of sums up. It's every age, it's every generation.
And every generation, he'll think back in 10, 20, 30 years and remember this particular second. If you watch the people, I mean, the body language, of course, differs tremendously, but it's just the way the individual wishes to pass that catafalque with a magnificent royal standard drape.
There was a thing I was talking to my friend Tim Stanley, a brilliant journalist who writes leader columns for The Telegraph, but lots of other great stuff, and has written really important books about the Constitution and the monarchy. And we were observing that they're, just so that you know what we're talking about, something slightly different, but that's just a reminder of what Richard and I were talking about. That is the walkabout yesterday that the King and the Prince of Wales did. But back to the Tim Stanley point, and you were saying, as we looked at the vigil there, the body language, you saw a woman do a straightforward curtsy. Everybody understands that. We've seen so many people make the sign of the cross, a very significant Christian gesture. The open hands held out, which is a Muslim, Islamic gesture, if you will, and also the hands held together. I mean, when the King talks about diversities of faith, it's there. It's every hour in Westminster Hall.
Absolutely. His speech was very significant, and This, of course, harks back to the controversy with the Dimbleby interview when he admitted adultery, and this was, of course, in the very unhappy period with the Prince and Princess of Wales very much at loggerheads. And he said he wished to be defender of faith and not of the faith. Now, of course, in his accession broadcast, fortunately, has clarified that because the Church of England is certainly not strong, far from it. He will be Supreme Governor of the Church of England, defender of the faith. But what he was emphasising, and it takes me back to the Diamond Jubilee, it was the first engagement the Queen held at Lambeth Palace. And she clarified the issue, I thought, beautifully by saying that the Church of England was an umbrella under which other faiths could flourish. And it was this that was his theme particularly.
Yes. Final point, and again, let's be grown up about it. You and I have been around in this game for a long time. There is a voice out there as well that is saying to the new king and his heir, steady as she goes, there are things that we've cherished and defended for a very, very long time. There is a line that you shouldn't cross, and there is a line to which you can go up and nod and smile and make change. How do you feel about that? Is the monarchy safe in their hands, plural?
I'd say that I think King Charles does recognise, on the one hand, and this was again came across in the accession speech, that you cannot be what could be called an activist monarch. I see that this, by the way, is being reinterpreted by some journalists that you could highlight issues but not campaign. Now, how that is handled depends an awful lot. It's to advise, to encourage and warn.
Yes.
It's red boxes, it's the opening of Parliament, it's the weekly meetings with the Prime Minister, it's his Christmas broadcast in his own words. That's as I see it. And of course the Queen, nobody knew what she thought. Nobody realised her view on Brexit or indeed on royal portraits.
Indeed.
One of the great strengths of a truly unique reign. So far, of course, as King Charles is concerned, people know what he thinks on a large number of issues. Things have changed now, and at the age of 70 he gave an interview and he said that he'd be foolish to diverge from the accepted line. But on the other hand, I do have, and I think a lot of people have, the suspicion that at heart he has got a certain amount of activism, which, fair enough, from climate change in 1969, this was taken on. So let's see, but it's a very, very fine line.